You're across the room from a supplier who knows you've got no alternatives, no budget, and a deadline. The textbook says that you've already lost the procurement negotiation, but I've been in that exact room more than once, and I've walked out with a better deal than I had any right to. I'm going to give you 6 tactics I use when I've got no leverage. And it's just worth remembering the whole context of what I'm going to teach you today is that power is almost entirely perceived. You actually can't measure it. Remember that. Power is not something that you can put on a scale and say, yes, it's X amount. It is entirely perceived. It's a mindset thing. A weak BATNA, that's the best alternative to a negotiated agreement, doesn't mean a weak position, unless of course you tell the person that you're negotiating with that it does. And I think most procurement people assume that just because they feel weak, it means that the negotiation is lost, and that's the mistake. Don't reveal your weakness is my first tip. So power is perceived, not measured. A weak best alternative to a negotiated agreement is only a problem if the other side actually knows. So keep your internal alignment tight before any supplier conversation. This is where really effective stakeholder management comes in. This is where you actually need to have that internal meeting first to explain the situation, to explain procurement's role, to explain the reason that you need to be leading this negotiation, and to explain very clearly that we can't give too much information away. The leak usually does come, unfortunately, from a stakeholder, so brief them on what's important here. This is where you need to watch for throwaway comments in early calls that might give the game away. And this is where you do need that tight management of your stakeholders. My second tip, when weakness is the play. Now this might sound counterintuitive, but it's worked for me many times. And this is actually where being the honest broker can really pay off. This is one that is underrated. Sometimes the smartest move is actually going in honest. Power comes from one side having a hold on the other. If you push too hard, you actually destroy them. You're powerless. And that's the interesting thing about power. Good, effective suppliers should know that. No side wants to leave the other side feeling completely diminished, because once you've taken all power away from someone, then effectively the dynamic shifts because you're actually powerless. They are a loose cannon, if you like. No decent supplier should want to flatten the partnership, because actually that means there's nowhere for them to grow. They would want a relationship where you feel satisfied, where you feel you're able to work with them, and you feel like there's a chance, an opportunity to grow with them. So if your position's genuinely that weak, saying a line like, I don't want to negotiate aggressively, help me make this work, is actually a really good, mature, professional way to approach the situation. The best suppliers respond to it, and actually the worst expose themselves. And actually then you've got to consider, do I even really want to be working with the supplier in the first place? What you're doing here as well is you're cutting out wasted energy, and it builds trust, a level of trust that will pay off long term. The third tip, leverage their weakness. So don't assume that your weakness is the same as their power. Maybe yours is actually the sale that they need to hit target. Maybe you're their route into a sector that they want to crack. Maybe they've got a slow quarter and they need the volume. Maybe the account manager you're dealing with is actually under some personal pressure to hit a deadline. When both sides have a weak BATNA, a best alternative to a negotiated agreement, the zone of agreement is wider than either side realizes. The side who wins is actually the one then who makes the other side's weakness more visible. Just a point here, actually, I've got loads of negotiation frameworks and cheat sheets which you can get straight away when you sign up to my weekly insights, my weekly newsletter. You can access 80 or more free cheat sheets. You get them the moment you sign up. Many people who have downloaded them have told me that they've got so much value from them and having them by their side to help prepare for a negotiation. So the link is in the description down below. Tip number 4, think bigger than this negotiation. It's that whole classic scenario of maybe you've lost the battle, but maybe you can win the war. Now, I don't always like seeing negotiation in adversarial terms, but it's worth thinking about this in terms of the long term. Power is actually transient. It changes, it shifts. The dynamics of a relationship shifts. And if anything has taught us that over the last few years in procurement and supply chain, it is that power can shift radically and fast with all the economic, political, all of the changes that are happening at the moment globally. So sometimes you've got to just think bigger than the negotiation you're in. The deal isn't the only deal. So this deal might not be the only time that you get to negotiate. So it might be that there's an inflationary price increase that you just can't fight today. It might still be worth taking it because you could use the loss to buy yourself planning time for the next round, to get yourself contingency, to build relationships with other suppliers. And sometimes it's worth playing that long-term game. Build the contingency, develop the alternative, strengthen your hand for the renewal. Long view in procurement always wins. Tip number 5, build coalitions. The volume changes everything. So there is a real example when I was a spirits buyer a long time ago at the Co-op, where we actually developed a coalition with Spa, who are also a convenience retailer, on their own label vodka and whiskey. So we actually had relatively small volume separately, but combined it was larger volume. And yes, there were a few compromises we had to make in terms of labelling standards, in terms of bottle size, etc. But we actually doubled our volume by going into partnership. That drove a 30% price reduction through the e-auction that we then led. So we actually consolidated our volumes, and that meant that we had more leverage than if we'd gone in weak. Sometimes think about building your coalitions. The lone negotiator is rarely the strongest. Find partners, and that can be internal or external. Find those relationships which will help build your power. Again, that's the importance of long-term planning. Number 6, identify your distinct value. And this one is hugely underrated. You almost always offer something that the other party wants. Find it. So that could be your brand, your reputation. Perhaps they really need a reference from you. Perhaps it's a foot into the sector. Maybe they want to get into the fashion industry to be able to prove their credentials. I remember a real example when I was negotiating with Clarks for in-store operation services. Relatively low volume, so it didn't feel like we had much leverage or power. And there were a few options that we had, but the Clarks brand name was worth a lot to the supplier we wanted to work with. Ask questions. Be open. Remember, knowledge is really useful in this situation. You're looking for that thing that is important to them. And the lever that you don't know about is actually often the one that you can't use. So remember, this is where, despite the fact that you might feel weak, you might not feel that you've got great control or leverage, maybe that's a perception. Maybe that there's things that they really want that you weren't aware of. Power can't be measured. You find it once you're at the table, often in the most unexpected places. So run through those 6 tips that I've given. I'm not saying that all of them will apply, but you could pick 2 or 3 of them. And you might just find next time you walk in feeling like you've got nothing, that actually one of those tips will change the deal. And if you sign up to Procure Bytes, my newsletter, you get instant access to all of my weekly insights. I talk about my negotiation strategies. There's 80+ free cheat sheets the moment you sign up, including ones on negotiation. The link is in the description. I'll see you in the next video.